So while we were talking about a 20-year-old game series for 3 months, a lot of things have happened in the gaming industry.
Yes, indeed.
Apparently, everything's about to collapse and everyone's concerned and freaking out.
We predicted it. We predicted it 6 months ago.
Kind of did.
Now, I kind of feel, there were people who claimed that they predicted, like the 2008 financial crisis or, the Depression or whatever. And they had just been saying it for 20 years, and eventually that stuff happens anyways. Yes. We've been calling for this for a while.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen that video, we did a video before Xenosaga, so 3 or 4 months ago.
Some time ago.
It was called, Is the Gaming Industry on the Brink of Collapse?
Which is funny because I actually think my point in that video was no, it's not. And here I am taking a victory lap just because it was titled that way.
Well, the signs have been there for a long time.
They have, yeah.
And I'm not even really necessarily saying there's going to be a collapse.
Right. It's not like there won't be games anymore.
Yeah, I think there could be. Like, there could be in the sense of a lot of, like say, Microsoft. I could see Microsoft at this point being like, we're
folding.
Totally. We're out of gaming. We quit. With, like, Xbox struggling the way that it is. I could see that happening.
They buy a ton of IP, ruin it all, and then fold.
And a lot of studios would close. I mean, that would be really bad. That would be really, and I could see that realistically happening. Yeah. I'm not saying it's going to, or that I'm even expecting it to necessarily. But I could see something like that happening, and I wouldn't read that online and go, "Oh my gosh, that surprises me." That would not surprise me at all.
Yeah, me neither.
But there's a lot of people who, even in the video we posted, or who respond to these types of concerns and say, the gaming industry is bigger than ever and it's making so much money.
Technically
and it's expected to grow this much. And my thought when I hear that is, do you understand how collapse works? Like,
when things are bigger than
collapse is not, it looks like it's starting to take a turn and it's losing money now. It's not a slow decline.
Right.
It's a collapse.
It happens all at once.
The thing gets so big and heavy that all of a sudden the floor falls out and no one expects it. And it's like,
that's very interesting.
No, what happened overnight?
That's almost like the idea of a bubble, right? Where it's like almost the investments are overvaluing, the product, and at some point the consumer sentiment catches up with it, and investors bail, and then everything just drops.
That's the key.
That's how bubbles
investors.
work.
We're going to be talking a lot about investors.
We
today.
Sure might.
We're going to be talking a lot about investors and investor boards, because this is the real problem. In my opinion,
bless those gentlemen. But
I guess
they might get a little.
Before we get ahead of ourselves a little bit, let's talk about some of the things that are in the news at the moment that is bringing this to, like, people's attention.
Probably the biggest one that our fans would care about a lot, because we did Outer Wilds, would be Annapurna just completely closing. By decision of the employees, by the way. They weren't forced to close.
So I don't know if they're closed as much as
I see.
They're left reeling, not knowing how to serve their partners, and
80% of the employees just left.
They just quit. They en masse. They just walked out.
Yeah.
And so this is a game publisher, Annapurna, who published games like Outer Wilds and a lot of other real popular indie games.
And we're slated to publish several more.
Yes.
And
now that's all up in the air. Who knows what will happen with that? But the point is, we read into it a little bit last night as we were preparing for this episode. And the reason for this mass walkout was that, so Annapurna is part of, like, a larger company. It's like the gaming publishing
like a
unit.
Division or unit maybe.
And what they wanted was to be able to separate from that larger parent company and become their own thing. And they weren't able to make a deal on that. And so basically that entire team in the gaming unit was like, nope, then we quit. I suspect it will be because they've all agreed they're going to go form their own company anyways and just continue working.
That would be great news for the video game industry.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
I mean, I don't know that, but that would be...
It's where their expertise is.
Would they all decide to just, let's just lose our salary and quit?
We're going to go be plumbers
there
now.
was a plan.
Yeah. They're still going to be in the game industry. They're just going to go do something else.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. They're going to start their own publishing house or something like that, in order to get away from whatever grievances they had of being a part of this organization.
Until the new publishing house gets bigger and gets investors and gets a board and gets appointed, new executives, and then you're in the same situation all of a sudden all again.
So there was that one. There's, of course, the game Concord, which was Sony-backed, had been in development for like a decade, was supposed to be like the next big, what do you call this, arena? It's not arena shooter. What is it? Like the Overwatch style of game.
Yeah.
And, well, that was a live service style video game where you're supposed to like continue paying to play it for freaking ever. That whole model of game, right?
Yeah, everyone looks at World of Warcraft and drools. Yeah, hoping that they can make their game be 20 years of people still playing it. And well, it turns out after 1 week.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't even know if it made it a week. I can't remember. But games as a service or whatever they call it, GAAS.
GAS,
gas. They're calling this, and this was a weird term, the Gassacre or something like that.
Yeah.
Where all these like games as a service titles are like failing.
And honestly, now. I mean, good. I'm not a huge fan of the games as a service model. I'm not. I do see that that's kind of where everything's moving. But I'm old school. I want a cartridge. I want a game. I want to own it. I don't like the games as a service model.
Yeah, so that game failed miserably and was offline within like days of release.
And the joke, the half maybe serious joke is that game's failure is why the PS5 Pro costs $700.
Yeah, there's definitely some rumors about Sony wanting to like...
They're going to recoup their losses from the hardcore gamers.
I'm not sure that I believe that.
Nah, I feel like it's in jest, but it's just funny that
it's funny.
At the same week or two that one game flops, they come out with an overpriced console. It's like,
that's another one, though.
20%. That's
PlayStation 5 Pro being $700.
$700.
Discless.
Discless, 80 additional
$80 if you want to add on a disc drive.
Plus tax, man, you're talking like
over $800 for a console, which I've literally never heard of in my life. That's crazy.
But inflation and all that. We'll be comparing it to apparently the PS3
at its time,
adjusted for inflation, which people also complained about being quite expensive.
Yeah,
especially because the Wii was like $200 or something. It was like way cheaper.
Yeah, so, there's all these things happening. There was something else, too, like before all of this that was kind of a big deal. It's Microsoft and Xbox kind of falling apart.
Yeah.
A lot of studios there that they bought up that they then basically let go of everybody. There was that game, gosh, I can't remember. It was a rhythm game that was really well reviewed. Hi-Fi Rush, that's the one.
Oh, Hi-Fi Rush, I did hear about this.
Yeah.
Yes,
so the developer of Hi-Fi Rush, right after they released this game that was like critically acclaimed and super popular and cool. I don't know how well it sold, but
that is the only question that matters for this stuff.
Basically, they just like let that team go.
Yep.
I know that one that was important to me was Ninja Theory, who developed Hellblade. Microsoft bought them, and like right after Hellblade 2 came out, I mean, the director had left the studio like a couple months before the game came out, so there was already kind of signs that there may be some problems with that project. But anyway, the point is, I don't know if Ninja Theory is gone necessarily, but there were rumors that they were in trouble right as the game released, and this is becoming common, where like a game comes out, the game is good, and all of those people are afraid they're going to lose their jobs as soon as the freaking game comes out. This is not uncommon at this point.
That's so strange. Yeah.
And
it's funny because, the question is, why did it used to not be this way? I'll tell you one industry that is exactly this way, and it's the visual effects industry.
Yes.
Like Rhythm and Hues wins the Academy Award for Best VFX, and like a month later, the whole place goes bankrupt.
Down.
Like, what in the world? Like, how is that even possible? But in the film industry, first off, it's cutthroat, and margins are thin now because despite the gross amount of money, gross, well, I guess I mean it in both ways, I suppose, but just the obscene amount of money, that the margins are actually not as...
this is the point.
The margins are thinner than you would think because you're dealing with such a large amount of money. And then a VFX studio that is doing that much work, it's really expensive to keep up a VFX house. Mm-hmm. And if you go even like 5 months without work, like you can't employ 200 VFX artists for any amount of time without work. So the big, huge projects come as that when they do, and when they don't, like everyone's fired because we don't have a movie to work on now.
Yeah, the film industry is in many ways very similar. It has a very similar problem.
It has become very similar, yeah.
Both these industries, both of which I've cared about my whole life.
Yeah, and it's entertainment, right?
Really terrible positions right now.
They are. And they, to that end, they have been for a long time.
For a long time.
Almost from their inception.
And I think there's one piece of it that you just touched on that is the hugest part. The margins are thin, despite what all those people online
a lot of money.
Respond to. Look at all the money it makes. Yeah, but look at how much it costs to produce this stuff and how long it takes.
Yes.
Like, the margins are not what you think they are.
They aren't.
In fact, most of these games lose a fetch ton of money.
Yep.
There's like a few sprinkled out there that like break through and are huge successes. Right. And then everyone tries to catch on to that trend, and everything becomes homogenized to a point where every game is almost the freaking same.
Every
if it's a big AAA game.
Yeah. Because they need to hit on all that. Some of this has to do with personas, just the concept in marketing of a persona, which is like, what is the one type of person that is, the majority in every different way that you can market to. And then every company does the research and basically comes away with the exact same type of persona. And how do we sell to this guy? Because there's a million of them, right?
Yeah.
And then you end up kind of getting, games made for that specific demographic.
Yeah. So as we sat down last night to prepare for this episode, do a little bit of research into some things so that we're not just, I don't know, reacting blindly to stuff, which, I don't know. Guess you can do that.
We never do that. What do you mean? What are you talking about?
I wrote down as my first note, this is the fault of corporations. So what I mean
Changed
by
my
that,
mind.
what I mean by that is the structural entity, which we call the corporation, is at fault for literally everything that I hate in both of these industries right now. Now, you go back, because, I mean, it's actually true of films too. All of the stuff I grew up with and loved, if we're talking about movies and games or whatever, they kind of like came from the minds of these very like visionary people who were pioneers.
Maybe outsiders to Hollywood at first.
Outsiders, or who were at least not in some big corporation at the time. They were in some kind of cool startup. Let's talk about like Squaresoft, for instance, right?
Square. Or small like Weta company, Workshop, like the Lord of the Rings stuff.
Small company, but like big ideas, some really motivated visionary artists at the forefront making the decisions and leading what they're making and what they're doing, finally breaks into something and has this big, massive success that is an awesome, like, timeless piece of art that will be remembered and beloved forever.
For centuries,
Then the company they work for becomes publicly traded corporation.
That's the best. That's the easiest way to cash in on the theoretical money that,
And like almost immediately, I have not seen one case to the contrary in which after that has happened, it doesn't lead to what we're seeing today.
It's wild. Square Enix is a great example of that because Squaresoft makes Final Fantasy VII, gets huge. Square Enix, well, they have to merge with Enix later, but after their massive success, because you talked about a small company that makes a big game. How does a small company that makes a big game, that makes hundreds of millions of dollars, how do they stay a small company after generating hundreds of millions of dollars? The company is going to become a large company. But the thing is, every game they made was held to that standard. And after, because you would imagine if Squaresoft in 1997 made the biggest game around and made so much money, it was like ridiculous. Why were they on the edge of bankruptcy like 3 years later and had to merge with Enix because of all sorts of business problems? Like, how did that happen? Well, the big money got involved, and all of a sudden, every single project became make or break, and they're investing, 9 figures into it. And then all of a sudden, any one thing fails, and now the whole company's over, whereas that wasn't the case before.
Before we get into any solutions here, let's complete our foundation of the problem.
Yeah.
We read this article. It was from massivelyop.com. Chris Neal was the author of it.
Chris Neal, yeah. And he was quoting a different article, but he had some interesting ideas himself.
Yeah, so I liked this, if I could read it. Much of the blame, unsurprisingly, rests on investor boards. Investors are placing additional pressure on companies to do more with less and requiring studios to provide full vertical slices of game out of pocket before they see a single cent of investment capital, all while demanding that profits rise year on year. In some ways, shareholders and institutional investors are like looter-shooter players. Investments are a never-ending quest for number go up. They want it to go up forever, and it simply cannot. This is it. This is really what it boils down to for me. Rather than having this sort of like private, independent entity, business, that is run by people who are passionate about what they're making or producing or whatever, there is this pressure all of a sudden. The money looks big in their eyes. It's dangled in front of them.
The paper chasers show up.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I can sell out and make a lot of freaking money because there's all these people willing to invest now.
Now, you've never been in their shoes before.
No, I haven't.
But I would assume that that's quite the tantalizing prospect.
I'm not saying that it's not. I'm not saying that it's not hard.
What would you do? Like when Frodo says to Aragorn, would you destroy it, right? And it's like, whoo.
I know what I would say.
I don't know if I'd say no to that money.
I'm not even going to pretend to say what I would do because it would be dumb. It would be dumb to pretend that I would know. But here, I fortunately, I'm not in that position. So
fortunately,
I can criticize.
That's
others.
one of the great things about getting older.
No, I just struggle to understand beyond this money point. Obviously, oh my gosh, I can be set for life and have generational wealth, and my kids will be able to like blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
that's a hard thing to say
down,
no to, and whatever. But I struggle to understand beyond that what the benefit is at all for the entity, for the organization to expand in this way, and for its primary goal at that point, switching from making the best product possible to making as much money as possible for these investors, because in order for us to bring in more investors, which makes our capital grow,
which is
makes our business grow.
Yeah, it becomes the goal.
In order to do that, we have to make sure they're making money on their investment, which means, as the guy says, the numbers have to go up every single year and then forever.
The new investors show up, and what do they want? To lure in also yet more new investors.
Yes.
And it doesn't end until anyone with money is investing in that product.
Yes.
And then it collapses because everyone with money has invested in that product, and there's no more future.
That's the thing. Is like
then people start selling and get out. The
thing is that there can never be a ceiling. There can in this structure, in this business structure, in the corporation, there can be no. There it is. We've made it. We're making this much money. We're generating this much. And we've arrived. Like, we can sustain this now. Like, this is good enough.
I have a question about this. Let's stay on the Squaresoft thing. What if So what did Squaresoft spent like $20 million making FF7, and I don't know what they made on FF7.
So
what was the
budget? The numbers are really
Sony
interesting.
Sony added an extra advertising budget.
So there's the $100 million advertising
That's
budget
what really pushed
from
them over.
Sony because they were desperate to sell PlayStations and they needed a big hit.
So,
but I think the game's cost for development was $35 million at the time.
35, okay.
So I don't know. Let's call that $35 million on the part of Square to develop this game, and most of that was invested in new tech, computers and things for 3D game development, which they had never done before this.
Yeah.
So that's mostly what that investment was.
So what if they spent 35 mil, they made 500 mil after, I don't know how much they made, whatever it is, they made a large 9-figure number afterwards. And what if they took like 50 million of that to like pay employees and like resolve debts and whatnot, and donated the other $450 million to charity, and then just made FF8 based on the same type of prospect that they had made FF7 on? Would Square Enix be in a better... Square Enix wouldn't exist. Would Squaresoft be in a better position had they literally donated all of that extra money than what ended up happening to them when they used it to just kind of create this thing that ended up...
At first, I thought the question was absurd, but now I think I know where you're going with it.
Would the company be better off?
Because...
Not money-wise, not investor-wise. Would the products be better?
Would the products be better is the question.
Would the meaning, they have reached an even higher pinnacle than FF10?
Here's where I'm kind of getting at with the whole like I hate corporations point. And I think you're touching on it, which I think is why this is relevant. I think that it is very good and healthy for a business to be at a certain size where you have
there's flexibility.
There's not like this very small pool of people making decisions, like one guy or something like that, who is prone to make decisions that might be bad or whatever. You need a team, a good team or pool of people who can input and like bounce ideas off of each other and challenge each other in a way that's healthy so that bad ideas are not pursued.
Okay. There is wisdom through the ages about what number is the right number, and it's called the Dunbar number.
Yes, I was getting to this.
Okay, keep going. No, you do it.
Introduce Dunbar. Introduce.
Okay, so as it turns out, this has been the case for a very long time, but tribes would grow a lot, and once they got too big, the tribe would kind of split, and some people would have to go off. Like maybe if you're in the Polynesian Islands, it would be, hey, go find a different island, and then some people would stay, other people would go. Maybe elsewhere, it would be, we're going to keep doing what we're doing, but you guys have to go somewhere else. And it would be the more adventurous people that would lead those people off. And maybe they met later and fought a war over who deserved to stay there or not. But the idea is that once a group gets over somewhere around 200 people, then it becomes not impossible, but very difficult for humans to maintain relationships in their mind over not just who the people are around them and their personal relationship, but to memorize everyone else's relationship to each other in your group. Like, oh yeah, John and Sally don't like each other because Jason showed up, and Bill and Stacy, and like to really grasp that well is over 200 people becomes very difficult. Right. And so you start to not really know people personally as well. Once you get over that number, then any new person shows up, and it actually exponentially increases the number of connections in your brain, because you don't need to just know that person. You need to know everyone else's connection to that person too. And every new person ends up like really causing a problem there. And eventually you get a kind of a natural fraction of, well, I know these people, and I can't keep it in my brain everyone else's relationship. I forget this guy's name. He just showed up 2 years ago. I don't know. He's got kids. I don't know. And eventually, like a line kind of becomes drawn, and the company has to split, right? The Dunbar number of 200 is really important, because once companies get so big that the CEO no longer knows the name of the spouses of his employees, something like that, then you could say that they just aren't cohering properly as a group, and that you'll get factions and you'll get different things. You'll get all sorts of problems, inner competition and things like that, that really just weigh a corporation down.
Yeah.
And so over, I think it's 200 people.
Yeah.
You are losing efficiency by adding new people.
Yeah. And this is why, like in the military, for instance, like they don't have commanders at any level who have more than that number under them. Right.
What is it? Because you can have, I used to know all this stuff, but squadron and then a company. Anyway, so one of those is 200 people, something like that.
That's the max.
For a division.
That a person can manage, basically. Yeah. One person can manage that.
And then other than that, you're just managing the managers, right? You're not dealing with people directly.
Right. So, yes, you're basically touching on what I think is the important point. I don't see the point in expanding a business beyond this because of the fact that it becomes inefficient. Like, I think the organization as a whole just by default becomes inefficient. Yeah. And I know this because I have worked at corporations.
Big companies, yeah.
And it is maddening to see how inefficient even simple decisions are. Something that is inconsequential, something that should not take this much effort or time to make this decision. It's so dumb that this is going through like 5 or 6 levels of approvals. But then by the time that gets approved,
it doesn't even matter anymore.
This person has left, and a new person has been inserted into that VP.
And they have a different philosophy of management.
And now they come in and they want to prove that their voice is valuable, and they look at it and they go, actually, wait a second, and the whole freaking process has to start over again over the dumbest, tiniest, most ridiculous, inconsequential things I have ever seen in my life. And I'm sitting here pulling my hair out like, what the freak are we doing? This thing should have been out so long ago. Why are we doing this?
And a good subsidiarity structure where you have more authority given to lower level managers to make smaller decisions is a good solution to that. But multiply that by 100, and that's our federal government.
Right.
So, like, talk about inefficiency.
But so this is why we have a game like Concord taking 10 years to develop, and Final Fantasy 15 taking 10 years to freaking develop.
And then you get it, and you're like,
long development stretches. And you have people, there's volatility moving in and out of the team. And I mean, how many people out there work for the same company in this age for like a decade or longer? Like, that's like almost unheard of, I feel like, at this
especially
point.
In tech. You'd have to be in a union job, or, you'd have to, typically in the spaces that we work in, like marketing, that's unheard of.
It just doesn't happen. People work at a place for 2 to 5 years and they're out.
Yeah.
And so, like, the more that I have worked in a corporation or in a corporate structure, I guess I technically work for an NGO, but anyway, there's a very corporate culture and structure to it, and it has
NGOs
become more and more that way. And the more that I see it, the more I start to understand all of these issues we are seeing in the gaming industry, because it has been swallowed up. When we were growing up, these companies that we followed, they were these small,
Square Enix, Nintendo, Sega.
Cool, like small, Nintendo was big. It had been around for a long time.
They were pretty big, but
Konami was pretty big. Yeah. But a lot of others. We're talking like BioWares, and we're talking like these cool game developers.
Westwood that made Command and Conquer.
They were small. And they were headed by a kind of a united team of visionary dudes, and there was a team that was manageable to get on the same page for a vision of what they wanted to do, and had the same passion for games as an art form or whatever their philosophy was, right? And so you would see all of these games come out that felt like they hadn't been passed through the hands of a million people to chop it up like crazy and throw in 5 million other ideas that don't belong in the thing. Because, but that's what the gaming market research told us is like really important right now. This market's like untapped and we need to like get into that. And that is the speak of executives who have spent their entire careers as just dudes running companies, or the speak of investors who are money people who have absolutely no passion for the industry they are investing in. They just see dollar signs. Ooh, it's making a lot of money. I should get into that.
Yeah, more of that.
These people are the ones who walked in and started making all of the decisions behind how these games should be made and what should be the structure of how we sell them and what is the business model. Those dudes are the ones calling the shots,
right?
Not the dudes who make the games and care about them. That's the whole problem. That's why we're at where we're at. It's the fault of the entity we know as the corporation.
Now, I have a great analogy, and then, don't worry, people, I can hear the comments from the future already. I'm going to channel a little bit of Ayn Rand and see if I can maybe pull some contrarian take out of this.
The Hegelian principle.
Exactly.
We're not saying we like Ayn Rand or we agree with Ayn Rand. You go into the camp and you try to find the kernel of thing you can agree with.
Yes, watch our BioShock review.
Yeah.
To know if I agree with Ayn Rand or not.
Watch our BioShock podcast if you have any doubts that whether we agree with Ayn Rand.
So, okay, but first of all, I want to talk about the word corporation, okay? You know what the word corporation means?
Well, so you have the corp, which is the corporeal, the root word for body.
Yes.
In Portuguese.
There you go.
Corpo.
Yeah, Latin.
Body.
Corp. So, a corporation is to make a body, right? It's the making of a body, right? And a large body, it's possible that a body can get too big.
Yes. Can grow too fat.
Indeed it can. Of course, there is a sign of impending collapse. Would be something along the lines of, in Genesis chapter 6, I think, the Nephilim, the giants. Giants show up, and it's like, hey, when the giants show up, that means a flood's about to happen, right? So just a little pattern recognition there. Corporations are giants, essentially. Here's another idea, is the Tower of Babel, right? As the Tower of Babel or Babel, I really don't care how it's pronounced, is being built, right? The idea is that, we are going to unify everything so much so in this city that we are going to build a tower that's the biggest tower ever, and it's going to go literally to infinity. It's going to go to heaven, which is like forever. Like it's just going to go and keep going until we reach like this super high point. And it doesn't work. And it fails, and everyone is fractionated and divided. Now, this is a pattern that plays itself out over and over and over again, including in corporations, in the stock market. You'll see things like going up and to the right, and then all of a sudden there's a correction, right? Because things are unifying around a company, around an idea, around a view of the economy. Things are going well and ideal, and then all of a sudden there's some doubt that creeps in, and it's like, this isn't going to work. And then a correction happens. It's either could be a depression or a recession, or it can be, this actually happens like daily, right? If you just follow the stock trends of any company during the day, you'll see the peaks and valleys, right? So on the macro and micro scale, you're seeing this idea that things are building up, things are building and cohering, and then things stop cohering and begin to kind of shatter and break down. This is more or less what happens with money and with these corporations and investors. We're at a time where power and money has been consolidated pretty heavily into just like a few companies, right? And that's not what it was before. But once the industry collapses, it might be a good thing, actually, because with the collapse and with the divestment from a lot of these investors, you will actually get innovations and a new leaders will show up, new companies will show up that weren't the companies of 30 years ago, and that aren't the big money that just is always getting their hands in everything. And then these people are going to have an opportunity to compete. This is actually what happened with tech. You look at all the billionaires 20 years ago, and it was a bunch of like oil people and steel people and then all of a sudden, computers showed up, and now all the rich people are computer people. Yeah. And it shook up everything, and all the money, all the investments that were in one place left, but then they consolidated around a new place, right? So you can talk about the giants and the flood or the Tower of Babel and then the, confusion afterwards. But it's the same kind of idea that it's almost like a wave that just keeps happening. You get this planet being formed, and then you get a star being formed, and then a supernova. And then the material from that supernova coheres and makes a new star, and then another supernova, right? So we're dealing with principles of nature here. And this is going to lead into my Ayn Rand kind of defense of, the rich people and the investors, right? And it is there's a nature to resources, that resources tend to, this is like the 80-20 principle, the resources the Pareto distribution, they tend to accumulate in places where there is already resources, right? Money tends to go to places that already have money, right? That's why you don't see, let's say there's a genius homeless guy who's got really good ideas. No one's giving him money because he doesn't have money. You got to have money, and then people will give you money. You need to prove your ideas first, and then the money will show up, right? People who are successful get more calls than they can even deal with from people who want to work with them. Yet other people just as talented aren't getting those calls because they don't have the clout, right? It's almost like gravity. It's just gravity. Things just start to accumulate until the thing gets too big and supernovas, and then things accumulate somewhere else. So money began to accumulate into the video game industry. It did that for a reason. It did that because the entertainment the video games provide is extremely valuable and extremely addictive. It's probably another one. And it showed itself as the future of entertainment for young people, right? Young people are the future. If you're investing in a product that's made for old people, it's possible that in a few decades your product is, well, your consumer base is no longer existing, right? But if you invest and get people hooked when they're young, you've got people for 60, 70, 80 years, right? So the money begins to accumulate in the video game industries, right? And basically, my biggest question to you, and this would be what I'm reading from the future of a lot of comments that are no longer going to happen now because I addressed it. So they were totally going to happen, but now they're not going to happen because I'm saying it. Did the investors ever do any good? Including the $35 million that Square Enix had to make Final Fantasy VII. Where did Square Enix get their money? Who were the early investors in Square Enix? Now, you would say they're passionate. The passionate people were the early investors. Totally agree. But investors, no less, looking for a return, and they got a handsome return. Were there ever investors that showed up to a game and made it better? And I think the answer is probably yes.
Oh, certainly yes.
I don't have examples, but I'm pretty sure the answer has to be yes, because that's why these resources flow.
This is not meant to put an indictment on the entire concept of investment.
Okay, this is very important. I heard somebody quoting. They said if there was a new 10 commandments written, the first one should be "Thou shalt invest in pharmaceutical stocks." I can't remember what it was. Basically, as soon as the commandments show up, it's like, hey, create a stock market and then put the pharmaceuticals on it, and that's how you're going to save the world. Something like that. Anyways, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that.
I don't know if I do either.
The idea being that once investment flows to a place, investment and money, that's attention. All of a sudden, people are focusing on something. The attention is going to a place, and it's a place that, if it's helping people, then that's what people are spending their money on. The reason why it's almost like a mirror being reflected back at us. The reason why these billionaire investors are looking at video games now and just saying, put my money there, that seems like a good one, is because people are spending so much money on video games in the first place. And if they're making these garbage games, why are people still buying them? Now, I know Concord is a good example to the contrary, but the reason they made Concord the way they did is because other games like it had sold very well. Yeah, and other games that I don't play. I never played Overwatch, or even what was that other one from Gabe Newell's company? The orange box. What was it? The one Parker
you're
used to
talking
play.
about Team Fortress?
Yeah, was it Team Fortress? Yeah, something like that. But people were paying for those kinds of games, and so they made a game that people seem to be paying for. You vote with your dollars. To the extent that maybe this one didn't work out, I totally understand. But the money is flowing there for a reason, and the reason is the consumers. So I think investors are downstream from consumers. If there's a problem with what investors are investing in and directing the industry to do, I think that problem actually started with what consumers were already buying, maybe based on bad habits or based on addictive games, and then make more of those, And at some point, the consumers actually do deserve some of the blame as well. And that might actually be the end of my Ayn Rand little point here. That if there is a critique to be made, sometimes it's possible that you could just say, like, for instance, I haven't really been playing a ton of games other than a lot of the games we play on this podcast, but these are older games. Yeah. I'm not involved in the new game scene very much, which means I don't have a vote, because I'm not putting the money in the places where I think the games should be. Instead, the people who are putting the money in places, those are the people who are voting. And so the voting is happening in absence of me, and then I'm complaining that I'm not getting what I want. But I'm not putting the money forward to buy the games that I think should be more promoted because, I don't know, we play old games on this podcast.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
So I want to respond to a comment here from our patrons real quick.
Perfect.
This is from Riker's Beer. It's been a while since we've seen you. Welcome back. And this is a point that is great, and I want to read it because I'm not sure what was said that seems to have suggested otherwise. I can't remember. But
did he call me an Ayn Rand stan?
No. I don't think it's in response to you, actually. Let me just read it. Finance doesn't work that way. Money isn't a tangible thing, especially at the at the highest level.
Very interesting.
Well, yes, and we understand this, right? It's all borrowing done on a ledger. All these companies operate off debt. Very little of their profit margin is actually liquid.
That's true. That's true. And they do that to avoid taxes. Another thing we have not yet brought up.
Yes.
Anytime you have surplus profit, the government taxes it, so they're forced to reinvest it into the company, which then, just kind of grows the corporation.
Right. Going public is usually seen as a bailout for over-leveraged businesses where they sell stock for a certain term injection of cash. CEOs and others at the top, of course, know this isn't sustainable and usually take the money and run before the chickens come home to roost. It's not so much greed as it's just a fundamental reality of how the business side of things actually work.
And once again, that's kind of what I'm saying here is that there's a law of nature at work here. Like there's a fundamental reality of just how the world and the universe seems to work that I think is applicable here as well.
I was going to respond to something, but now I kind of forgot what I was going to say.
I'm sorry, I went on for way too long.
No. In response to that, it's again sort of leading back to the whole sort of like center of my contention here, which is there's a certain amount of growth that happens, and at a certain like threshold, whatever that threshold is, it's no longer a sustainable thing to expect year upon year upon year of growth and growth forever.
Yeah.
Like there's just a threshold that's crossed, and it's like if that's what you expect to happen, you're going to start cutting corners. You're going to start doing all kinds of anti-consumer practices for the purpose of just showing that you grew that year.
One of them was in 2020, a bunch of video game companies actually applied for COVID relief funds and basically just used it to make video games instead of maybe what that money was actually supposed to be used for.
Okay. I think he's clarifying here maybe where what we had said conflicted with what he's saying. Most investors are just looking for a place to put their money to escape inflation.
Yes, absolutely.
They don't actually care about profit margins, only the promise of growth against the devaluation of the dollar.
Yeah, that's Keynesian, that's Keynesian economics. Right
here it is again. The problem is investor boards.
Well, hold on. Oh, yes. But he said, why are the investors doing that? And it's because of inflation. So now we can say the problem is the Fed.
Well, okay, sure.
The problem is our Keynesian monetary policy.
But if the company in the first place did not open their business for these people to escape their
the inflation
trap and taxes or whatever.
Yes.
And say, hey, you can escape with our company. If they stayed private, this wouldn't occur as far as like we're living in a world where we have these problems with everything being turned into a game as a live service, everything's riddled with microtransactions, or all of these things that people hate about the games industry, and that has led us to where we are. It starts there. It starts with the decision to enslave yourself to an investor board in the first place. That's it.
Yeah, they call it the golden handcuffs. The golden handcuffs, very suspiciously similar to a golden ring, just something that's really hard to say no to.
Yeah, he goes on to say the problem is that you need to get deep with the debtors to even be profitable in the first place. It's a catch-22. So,
but it's a catch-22 that has yielded the illusion of economic growth for like 200 years. That's kind of cool.
My
Which
point.
has also resulted in
real
illusion.
world It's
stuff.
all a fetching illusion.
It is,
it's
except
all fake.
It is, except like lifestyle, quality of life is pretty good.
For the fetching people dumping the money, right?
Well, I'm saying in America, just America in general, like, the 200 years of the illusion of a good economy has actually yielded like some pretty positive stuff.
Yeah, but I guess this is
even
the
though
point.
It's an illusion.
So you get
it does have real world effects.
You have this illusion that has real world effects
that are
for
positive.
a while. But that leads to the collapse we're talking about.
Yes, totally. That is accurate.
And it's
here's the big question:
when it happens.
What happens when our population starts shrinking? This is one of the this is a big topic of debate amongst the right and left at the moment. What happens when, like in Japan has had a shrinking population for a while. They have to market products outside of Japan in order to catch in order for the companies to still be able to promise that we will grow in the future, right? Because imagine a subscription model plan where everyone in Japan is part of it and there's less people every year. Well, they're going to be projecting lower revenue every year because there's less people. So you need to somehow expand your network. As soon as the population of the earth starts to decline, the stock market will stop working the way that it has worked forever, and the collapse will be quick, and we'll have to find a new way to live, because once the network for everything starts shrinking, the promise of future positive revenue is just impossible for any company to make unless they're just a small one that's growing.
So this is an interesting point. So you're talking about
I'm talking way down the road.
population decline.
Population decline means a declining network of users.
And this has been a while since I've even bothered to look into this topic at all. But based on what I heard 10 years ago, which is probably out of date, I thought I had heard that there was at least some model that predicted that there was. First of all, I think what I was reading at the time was talking about the fear or the concern about overpopulation.
Yeah, there's actually concerns both ways.
Yeah, going out of control.
Yeah,
and this was saying this is not as much as a concern as you might think, because there's going to come a point where it levels out. Yeah, and I think the number that they were estimating at the time was about 12 billion.
Oh, 12. Okay,
at that level, it's like the population's not going to continue going beyond that.
Right.
It'll kind of equalize there.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this. What happens
after that?
What system do you build when there is no more growth? That's what I'm saying. Yeah. There's got to be a freaking system invented that you reach a certain level and you go, we can still function. We don't have to keep growing literally forever to function as a business.
Well, this is why some people want to leave Earth so that we can keep growing forever. Got to go to Mars. Got to go to the moon.
No, dude, that's not the solution.
Got to leave.
Solution,
colonize the galaxy.
The solution is find a system that works better for the circumstances.
Then you colonize the galaxy cluster.
Not this insane idea of keeping the freaking thing,
the Tower of Babel,
keeping the illusion going forever.
Building it.
Just stop faking the freaking system in the first place.
Now, this is good. Your critique is valid. It rings true to me. I agree with you. Other than the fact that I don't know what to do.
You have to figure it out at some point.
What do we replace it with?
Why don't we figure it out now?
Yeah.
So start talking about it now.
Smart people of the world.
Let's figure it out and change it instead of sitting here and just kicking the can down the road forever.
Well, it's not that companies can't still make money. It's just that they can't promise future revenue to investors. Just the investor model kind of breaks. But the thing is, the investor model that's the reason anything happens in America, is because people put money behind it. And people only put money behind it so that they can make more money afterwards. Maybe you'll get these investors that are always just investing in smaller companies. But the thing is, there will be no big companies anymore. Like a company like Google.
Good.
I agree, actually. I think it's great. You know what? We're describing utopia right now and acting like it's a problem.
Break it down, man. Break it down, spread it out, smaller entities.
And then smaller investments.
That are better at making decisions and being effective and efficient. And actually doing something.
Yeah, getting rid of Google actually might be the net benefit to humanity.
Sorry, I've been sick with COVID. Let me mute myself.
this conversation's fascinating, and it can go in 1,000 different ways, and we could probably talk about all kinds of things for a really long time.
As like Riker's Beard and probably many other people who understand the world of finance infinitely better than me can probably prove in like 2 seconds. Like, I'm not like even pretending to be an expert on this. I'm
just see a problem.
In generalities that I can see what the problem is. I think I have correctly identified what that is. I don't know if or what the solution is. I just know that this doesn't work.
I also will say the point of inflation is to encourage investment. It's to discourage hiding your money under the couch because your money loses value. And it's to encourage, find a place to put your money where other people are using it as capital to keep growing the machine. So it's done on purpose. That's the point of inflation. And I would say that a lot of the critiques of the investment system could also easily, it's only one more step to just be laid at the feet of Keynesian economics and the Fed and Jekyll Island and, the whole system of, like fractional reserve banking and all the stuff that America does to,
world does.
To keep investment going forever.
Yeah.
The inflation is a big part of the problem. But once again, it has encouraged investment that has led our country to be quite nice to live in. So I don't know that I want to see a world that is not this. I don't know. Maybe it'd be way better. But the likelihood that it will be way worse is also possible.
I don't disagree that the system is set up to, for some period of time, create like
the question is just
a fairly like high quality of life for a lot of people and like good times. But those good times are limited.
Yeah.
And we are seeing them becoming more and more limited even in our own lifetime. There's like freaking economic collapse around the corner like all the freaking time.
Yeah.
There comes a threshold that I'm talking about. There is a threshold, and we've passed that threshold. And the gaming industry has passed that threshold, and the film industry has passed that threshold.
Yes.
and this
entertainment.
It cannot sustain this course.
Yeah,
it can't.
We cannot. What is this?
Crazy.
This cannot continue. Right?
This cannot continue.
This cannot continue. So what I hear from you mostly is a plea for the powers that have taken something you love and turned it into a machine that has become predictable and that is harder to be defensible as art. That's what I hear.
Yeah, I mean,
like as a fan, because you're like, I'm not an expert or anything, but just the thing I love is breaking, and can we not break it, please? And that I sympathize with that. If I'm characterizing you correctly.
I think to add to that, or maybe reiterate a certain point, we all see where this is going. I know you see it, and I know that your plan is to bail,
right,
and leave the rest of us without jobs while you go to your private island and chill.
Montana, actually,
right?
Most of the billionaires own property in Montana.
I know that that's what your contingency is. I know that you have a way out, but you know just as well as I do that this is not a sustainable system.
Yeah.
It's not going to freaking last. So why don't we actually just try to find something that works better long term instead of just continually bailing every time an industry collapses, or you just milk the last of what's left of this and then just let it die? Can we stop doing that every single freaking time?
I don't think we can stop doing that. I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately. This happens politically. This happens within government. This happens within corporations. This happens anywhere that there is this, anywhere. Whenever things start to decline, people start to what is called like loot the treasury. Like as the Titanic was sinking, there were people before getting on the lifeboats who made sure to go down to that kitchen and grab all the silverware.
That's insane to me.
But like when you're on a sinking ship and you know it's sinking, and everyone doesn't know it's sinking yet, but you know it's sinking, and you're going to be one of the first on that boat to get out before people realize, and okay, only the women and children, no more men. But if you're maybe one of the higher ups who knows what's happening before it's been informed, there's valuable stuff. Why not why does your family have to starve and die like everyone else's? You know, why don't you just go? It's right there. It's going to be at the bottom of the ocean anyways. You may as well be the one to take it, and then get off on that boat. And then people are going to die, but someone was going to, you just took the place of someone else, and then you would have died. So better you than them.
Okay. So obviously the appeal to
I'm just saying that humans
top is futile, and I knew that before having this conversation.
But once again, I'm just saying like there's a natural aspect.
Now I'm talking to all the people out there who care about games, right?
Yeah.
Like, what can we do?
What can we do?
To like
let's pool our money to equal one investor.
Freaking get like to get out of that and
support indie.
Build something different.
Support indie. Like I said before, I have largely been taken out of the democratic system of selecting which games get made because I don't purchase games as often anymore, except for older games. So buy indie games, vote with your dollar, support the smaller companies that are still doing it right. Of course, what that will do is just attract the investors to them. I get it. There's a problem here, but at the very least, we can stave this off for a little. Okay, I'm not solving your actual problem. All right,
it doesn't.
I get it.
It's a whole structural.
Be the Ubermensch and destroy the old set of values and forge a new set. We'll see. Yeah. Indies, man. Indies are still making the pixel art. They're still making the good art, the risky games that investors are kind of don't want to dip their toes in. That's coming from the indie scene, and there's still a lot of it. There's a lot of indie companies, more now than there's ever been, and they're making really good content. Yeah. I thought about this. I was at a bookstore today, a used bookstore, and there are so many books, like just in the world.
A lot of books.
There are so many books, and I'm like, who would read any of these? And then I find like the 3 books that I like, and I'm like, oh, these books are cool, and I buy those. And then, I'm like, there are so many books. The fact that there are a ton of bad books out there doesn't mean that the book industry has collapsed. As long as the good games are still being made, everything else can be crap. And just find those indie devs who are working on small teams below the Dunbar number, and and support those guys. And they're, even when they sell out, because they will, because who can resist the One Ring, then find a new one. And there will always be somebody operating in that space, making good stuff for you. There's more now than ever.
Yeah. I agree with that, largely. And
it doesn't solve the problem.
And I also
it helps
don't
a little.
I also don't want to like sit here and pretend that there's not like genuinely very good products that come out of like the massive machine, right? Like, I haven't played Black Myth Wukong, for instance, but it's like it's not like there aren't some really good stuff coming out of that space. I know that's more of a Chinese developer.
Yes, but China has just recently, I think even this year, they've really broken in huge into the gaming industry.
And there's always some really, really good AAA level stuff. So I'm not sitting here pretending like it's all homogenized and garbage and terrible. I'm just saying that the larger trend that we're seeing as far as like the concerning things happening are all a result of this system where something, like you said, starts garnering attention and it gets swallowed in this corporate machine.
Right.
That basically its function, as we have seen at this point, is to extract every last freaking drop of milk they can out of that thing and leave it to die when it's collapsed. Yep. And then they just move on to the next thing to suck dry and kill.
They leave a black hole in its wake. Yeah.
And I mean, again, not going to pretend to have a solution to this, but I am going to tell you.
I would love to hear it. If anyone
this is exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
This is why it's happening.
I've never heard a solution to the problem of a declining network. Right. I've never heard a solution to that. If anyone in the comments has like a dope solution to how you can survive in a world without investment.
Are we expecting that we're going to see a decrease, or are we expecting an equilibrium? That's what I guess I'm wondering at this point.
I think it would guaranteed be a decrease.
Outdated, like 10 years ago, whatever I was reading, that was guessing it was going to like level out at 12 billion.
There would be a massive decrease. Massive decrease. Every developed nation has below replacement birth rates, every single one. And the only ones that are having above replacement birth rates are the ones that are, the undeveloped nations. As soon as they become developed, which is happening, we would expect the trend to continue. Birth rates will go into the below replacement. And the question is when they would level out, because I don't think humans, we'll go extinct for other reasons, but I don't think the birth rate thing would necessarily lead to extinction. It'll lead to massive decline and horrible problems. But it might level out, I don't know, like 1 billion or 500 million or something like that. And then it's like, okay, then it finds an equilibrium. But the decline is inevitable. I think it's all but assured. The only question is how we're going to be able to manage it. And AI is like a huge, I hate AI so much. I hate everything about it, but it will be a huge asset in the decline of human existence.
An asset capital. In the decline, or an asset in slowing the decline?
Both. It'll make it happen faster, and it'll also make the landing softer when it happens, because it will be able to do a lot of the stuff that
the lack of people
will not be able to
anymore.
But it will also probably in the future be able to foresee a lot of these problems and maybe mitigate them to some degree. But the investor model will be destroyed once you have a rapidly declining population. Oh, once again, though, the anti-aging stuff, who knows? Maybe I didn't bring that into the equation. The anti-aging stuff might actually stop the decline of birth rates, which everyone just lives forever now, which is like not great. But it would stop it, and then you would have an increasing birth rate again. But the average human would be like 400 years old, which is maybe good, maybe bad. I don't know.
Eternal life becomes the only solution.
Yes, eternal damnation, as we like to call it.
Guy Keith back on here. Where's your life?
Well, it could be in which case investment becomes viable again, because you have an expanding network once again, and then every company, even the biggest ones, can keep promising growth. But that doesn't fix the problem.
Not the problem.
Once again,
the whole idea of
then
the
you still got to get to
perpetual.
Mars.
Okay, the whole problem is a system built on the expectation and necessity of expanding growth year over year. That's the whole freaking structural systemic problem.
Because
we can't build an economy on this concept. We've got to find something better than that.
And nature tells us through many different ways, but one of them being a supernova, that at some point. You cannot, stars can't just keep growing forever. At some point, they just freaking blow up. And there's no star that has ever overcome that we're aware of. The reality of the world, of the universe. Yeah, I mean, investments would be the same.
We've talked a lot about the acceptance of a thing comes and then passes.
And just be okay with it.
Be okay with it.
Like, be grateful.
For the times that you had, but like everything dies. Nothing lasts forever.
It's hard to do when it's happening, but especially when we think that maybe we can do something about it.
Sure.
Right? And which is where I think we're at right now, where it's like we foresee a big problem ahead. What can we do about this? I don't know yet, other than supporting indie devs. That at least staves it off for a little bit. But other than that, somebody needs to come up with a dope genius system that'll get rid of the investment system that Mother Nature supports, and that has been around for, millennia.
Let's see. We've got a couple of comments here, and then I think we'll wrap it up. Let's see. Where is it? Where is it? Games won't die. This is coming from Alan.
No,
they just might not be recognizable as they are.
Well, in the future, games will basically be indistinguishable from reality, and the way you experience them will be quite different. So games will continue to exist, like The Matrix.
Let's see. I think, where was this comment? There it is. Beardmo says the AAA industry has had their finger so far off the pulse that it's practically up their own ass for the longest time.
It's true, but yet those games still sell, except for Concord. Those games still sell millions of copies. Who's buying them? Because those are the people.
And this is exactly what Riker's Beard says in response. Correct, but the fault also lies on the consumer who keeps buying these predatory products. One microtransaction whale is worth thousands of copies sold.
Whales. Blame the whales.
On the well, here's the thing, though. Don't blame the whales, because this is a psychological manipulation.
Of the addiction system.
They are, and we talked about this. I don't know when it was.
But I can't blame a system of addiction. I have to blame something.
It's predatory. I think the people who they know.
Yeah,
they're going after. They built their business model on a whale. They're exploiting a person who has a problem.
Yes. Yeah, that's evil.
It's horrifically evil. The fact that was built into a business model, written into a document as if this is how we're going to freaking make this money, like a lot more money than what they used to do, where they would just sell units. We're going to make way more than that by creating this perpetually online, never-ending game that people just like, one guy spends like a freaking
and it justifies the
tens
whole
of
thing.
thousands of dollars on every year.
Yeah.
And we'll find like, a pool of those guys, and that's the business model. That's what I'm talking about.
That's like gang stuff. That's like Yakuza.
That is not how the thinking of the visionaries who started these companies we loved, that's not how they thought.
Yeah, that was never their goal.
That was when freaking a perpetual CEO walked in and said, hey, what's a way we can make more money?
Yeah.
And they came up with that.
Yeah.
That's the threshold I'm talking about, where it's like the business can't just be create a great product anymore. It's got to be, well, we're not showing green every single freaking metric every single year. How do we do that? Oh, let's exploit people who have problems.
Right.
That's when the business has effectively died in my eyes. It's over. It's over. Yeah. Like, it's over at that point. You are now on a path to collapse.
Right, and the people who justify it continuing, their rampage through the video game industry. Like, if somebody has facilitated that, they should be barred from investing in any video game company in the future. But it's not true. They're rewarded. And they continue to expand
when that
those
dude
practices.
Who came to the meeting with that idea is calling the shots, it's over.
He gets a promotion.
It's over.
Yeah, he ends up running the show.
Your company is freaking... The death knell has already rang. Right. Sure, you'll show some great numbers for your next 20 years, maybe. Yeah. But then Concord will happen.
Yeah.
And $800 consoles will happen.
That's wild.
And
well, because we talked about inflation being a problem with investing, but like, it's a freaking talk about an $800 console now. My goodness, I don't know about you, but the amount of money I make per year has not quite increased with inflation. So
I have
that's
no
insane.
idea how that could be justified.
Yeah.
For anybody. I mean, it's like you can build a PC that's expensive, but at least that does like a ton of other functions.
It does other stuff, and it'll probably last longer.
Work.
Yeah.
You can like make money with that thing. Right? Like there's all kinds of different applications of that machine.
And it will, through Steam or other things, be able to play the next gen games. Right, maybe you'll have to downgrade your graphics a little, but the PC, with your PS5 Pro, you probably won't be able to play PS6 games. I don't know, maybe it will, but probably not. But if you build a PC, it's like you can still download the game and have it and play it on your last gen PC, right? You can still play it.
Somebody sent me a video yesterday. This might have been Hopeless Romantics. I can't remember who did. Sorry if I got it wrong. Somebody sent me. It was a short on YouTube. I don't remember the name of the YouTube channel. I'll try to look it up and like put it in the description or something. It was a guy who had worked on StarCraft.
Oh, really?
StarCraft 2, I think.
Such a good game.
And had worked overtime for 2 years to produce one of the expansions to StarCraft.
Oh, nice.
And he was like, he was basically saying that there was some kind of like colorful rainbow pony or something like that. That was a downloadable microtransaction in World of Warcraft that made more money than that expansion he spent 2 years working on StarCraft.
Oh, shoot.
That's what we're talking
That's
about.
Insane.
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So a visionary looks at that and goes, that's BS.
Yes.
I'm never doing that.
Yes.
My principles tell me no.
Well, it's like what, not Sakaguchi, what's his name?
I don't care. That made $1 billion. I will refuse to make that my business model.
A good man.
But the people who make decisions at a publicly traded corporation are not those people.
Yeah.
They see that and go, do that as well.
Times 100. Yeah.
Let's
Times
actually
infinity,
find a better way to exploit somebody than that.
Right. And the idea is, well, if we don't do it, someone else will. So it may as well be us, right? That's the sinking Titanic problem once again. Someone's going to loot these whales. May as well be us. Why does John have to be the one to become a billionaire because of the whales? Why not me? Like the whales are going to lose their money either way. Well, often they have gambling addictions and other stuff too. But we need more people like Hayao Miyazaki, who when he first saw the AI anime he said this is an affront to humanity, right?
Yes,
and he said no.
It was
I love him for that. That is so good.
Yeah, it was like it might have been AI, but it was something
or was
that
it CG?
It was an
3D.
It was a CGI animated thing, but it was an automated process.
Right.
It wasn't like hand animated, and it had created some really like sort of disturbing visuals that they were like showing off as a tech demo.
Well, and all the young people were like, "Isn't this so cool?" And he was just like, "Get off my lawn."
That's what I'm talking about.
No. Yeah.
People like him who are like
he's the visionary, obviously,
and care about the freaking art.
Yeah.
They need to be the ones making decisions.
Yeah.
And that's not what happens when you take your private company into a publicly traded corporation.
Money, you serve the money. Once again, I mean, there's 1,000 biblical analogies for all this, but I'll bring another one in, which is what's his name? Who we talked about this in Quest 64, the god Mammon, the god of money, right? Basically, you start working for the money, and instead of the money being a tool, it becomes something that starts to control you.
Yes.
Right? And the money itself seems to kind of have a will of its own in a way, and it kind of moves things on its own, and you either jump along or get left behind. But either way, there's like what Adam Smith called the invisible hand, right? Like there's something that's controlling these market forces, right? And it's out of the control of any one investor, right? But if they want to make money, here's the trend: jump on or let it pass you by. And once again, like just kind of a law of nature kind of thing that's happening here. But at some point, the money starts to run the company. Like,
yes,
if
that's
you have
exactly
enough money,
what it is.
It develops a will.
It's
like there are 1,000 myths about this going way
pressure
back.
to grow forever. It's the pressure to make more.
Well, this is Sigmund.
It's now controlling all your decisions.
Sigmund and the Old Norse myth, after he kills Fafnir and he inherits the gold, right? And he's told by the dwarf, he's like, this is cursed gold. Like, you will be cursed for this. And Sigmund's just like, I don't freaking care. I'm going to take all this gold. This is mine now. And he ends up living just a horribly accursed life. And this is a good one because in The Lord of the Rings, Tom Bombadil, after they go to the Barrow Downs, right? And then Tom Bombadil takes all the money out of the Barrow Downs, right? And he's just like, oh, sick. And he gives the hobbits swords and stuff. And then he says, no one touch any more of this. You've all had your share. No one touch it. We're leaving the treasure here, and it will disperse as it will now. But if any one of you take it, the spirit of the barrow weight will follow it, and it will control you instead of you using it as a tool, right? And it's metaphor, brilliant. And in fact, Tolkien, I think, is referencing Sigmund and Fafnir, specifically the Nibelungen legend, when he says that, because it's like, hey, this is how you deal with mass amounts of hoarded gold so that it doesn't control you.
Well, and that's a recurring theme in his stories anyways.
Yeah, totally.
With the dwarves and Smaug and everything else.
With the Hobbit, yeah, exactly, yeah. Like anybody who wants it all for themselves, like that, it starts to control you, man, in a weird way that's hard to explain.
Yeah. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that.
Was that coherent? Did we just ramble? Like
if it's not clear, I hate corporations. Corporations are too big. Businesses are too big.
Yeah.
They can't make effective decisions. The people making the decisions are idiots.
Yep, they're slow, they're inefficient.
Who are controlled by the pursuit of money and wealth instead of the advancement of the art form.
Okay, I'm going to put on my Ayn Rand cap again. The biggest corporation is the government.
Well, that's true. I don't even know if anybody disagrees with that.
Oh, okay, all right.
I actually think that's actually pretty.
Hide there for a second.
I'm not sure that's a hot take. That's just true.
Dope.
That's just a universally known truth. All right, dudes, we're done with this episode. We're going to do Hyper Light Drifter next. Follow us if you want to see that. Peace out. See ya. Bye.